The collision. Adrian Mercer adjusted his custom-tailored Armani suit as he surveyed the glittering ballroom of the Westbrook Hotel. Tonight marked the 10th annual Tech Visionaries Gala, where his company, Horizon Innovations, was the leading nominee with 7 potential awards. The champagne flowed freely as Silicon Valley's elite mingled beneath crystal chandeliers, their conversations a symphony of ambitious plans and strategic compliments. "Mr. Mercer, Forbes is calling you the Steve Jobs of neural interface technology," gushed a young reporter, thrust before him by his PR director. "How does that comparison sit with you?" Adrian offered his practiced smile, the one that showed just enough teeth to appear genuine while maintaining an air of humility. Jobs was a visionary, but at Horizon we're charting territories even he couldn't have imagined. "Neural tech isn't just the future, it's the present we're creating." His PR director beamed at the soundbite. Perfect for tomorrow's headlines, Adrian had mastered the art of appearing simultaneously humble and superior, a delicate balance that had become second nature after 15 years of climbing to the top of the tech world. "And I suppose your competitors are still playing with Lincoln Logs while you're building skyscrapers?" The voice came from behind him, feminine but firm, laced with unmistakable sarcasm. Adrian turned to find a woman in her early 30s, holding a champagne flute and wearing an expression that could only be described as deliberately unimpressed. Her burgundy dress was elegant but understated, setting her apart from the designer showcase that most female attendees had opted for. "I don't believe we've met," Adrian said, extending his hand automatically. "Adrian Mercer." "I know who you are," she replied, taking his hand briefly. "Olivia Winters, The Digital Chronicle. I'm covering your coronation tonight." She gestured vaguely toward the stage where the awards would later be presented. Adrian's PR director stiffened beside him. The Digital Chronicle was known for its scathing exposés on tech giants and their ethical lapses, not the friendly press they'd cultivated for tonight. "Shouldn't you be taking notes somewhere, Ms. Winters?" Adrian asked, his smile thinning slightly. "I'd hate for you to miss any key details for your article." Olivia took a sip of her champagne. "Oh, I've got the main details already. Brilliant but arrogant CEO set to collect shiny trophies for making technology that further erodes privacy while simultaneously widening the digital divide." "Did I miss anything?" The nearby conversations hushed as heads turned their way. Adrian felt a flush of heat at his collar, not from embarrassment, but from the unfamiliar sensation of being directly challenged in a room where he was accustomed to reverence. "You've missed quite a bit, actually," he replied, keeping his voice level. "Including the accessibility initiatives we've launched and the privacy protocols that exceed every industry standard. But I wouldn't expect the Digital Chronicle to report anything that doesn't fit its predetermined narrative." "Predetermined?" Olivia raised an eyebrow. "That's rich coming from the man whose PR team scripts his spontaneous responses for interviews." Adrian's jaw tightened. "I assure you, Ms. Winters, everything I say comes directly from me." "Including that rehearsed modesty?" She smiled sweetly. "Your aw shucks, I'm just changing the world routine needs work." "Mr. Mercer, I can see the ego from orbit." Before Adrian could respond, the event coordinator announced that dinner would be served shortly. Olivia raised her glass in a mock toast. "Enjoy your evening of adoration. I'll be at table 19 if you'd like to provide any other quotable gems about your unparalleled genius." As she walked away, Adrian felt something unfamiliar, a disruption in his carefully maintained equilibrium. Women never spoke to him that way. No one did, not anymore. He had built his empire on brilliant innovation and ruthless efficiency, cultivating an image that commanded respect and often fear. Yet this journalist had cut through his armor with casual precision, leaving him standing there with an unexpected feeling stirring in his chest, something between indignation and intrigue. "Should I have her removed from the guest list for future events?" his PR director whispered anxiously. Adrian watched Olivia's retreating figure, the confident set of her shoulders as she navigated through the crowd. "No," he said finally. "Let's see what she writes first." But as he made his way to his table, surrounded by admirers and sycophants, Adrian found his attention repeatedly drifting to table 19, where Olivia Winters sat, clearly unimpressed by the opulence around her. taking notes with a focus that suggested she saw through the entire charade. For the first time in years, Adrian Mercer felt seen, not as the tech visionary, not as the billionaire CEO, but simply as a man with an ego that perhaps deserved a little deflating. Lingering thoughts. Adrian Mercer stared at the acquisition documents spread across his mahogany desk, but the numbers and legal terms refused to hold his attention. 3 days had passed since the Tech Visionaries Gala, where Horizon Innovations had predictably dominated, collecting 5 of their 7 nominated awards. The victory should have felt sweeter. "Adrian, did you hear what I said about the Patterson deal?" He looked up to find his CFO, Tanner Wells, watching him with mild concern. The boardroom had fallen silent, all eyes on him. This never happened. Adrian was known for his laser focus, especially during high-stakes negotiations. "Sorry, just considering all angles," Adrian replied smoothly, straightening in his chair. "The intellectual property valuation seems inflated. Have our team reassess and come back with a counteroffer." The meeting continued, but Adrian's thoughts kept drifting to Olivia Winter's article that had been published yesterday morning. Unlike the fawning coverage from other outlets, her piece had been surgical in its critique. Horizon's neural interface, revolutionary technology, or privacy nightmare. She had acknowledged the technical achievements, but raised pointed questions about ethical implications that Adrian's team had carefully sidestepped in press releases. Most infuriating, or perhaps intriguing, was her personal assessment of him. Adrian Mercer navigates the tech world with the confidence of a man who believes his own mythology. Behind his practiced humility lies an unmistakable certainty that he alone understands the future. Whether this certainty is his greatest strength or his blind spot remains to be seen. "We'll reconvene tomorrow," Adrian announced, ending the meeting abruptly. "Tanner, stay behind." As the executives filed out, Tanner approached with a concerned expression. "Everything all right? You seem distracted?" Adrian hesitated, then pushed the digital chronicle across his desk. "Have you seen this?" Tanner skimmed the article and winced. "Ouch, not the usual puff piece. Want PR to draft a response?" "No," Adrian said quickly. "That would validate her criticism." He paused, drumming his fingers on the desk. "What do you know about Olivia Winters?" Tanner raised an eyebrow. "The journalist? Not much?" The Digital Chronicle has a reputation for being the conscience of the tech industry, or its most persistent critic, depending on your perspective. Winters has taken down some big names with her investigative pieces. Adrian nodded, remembering how directly she had challenged him at the gala. No nervous laugh, no attempt to soften her criticism with flattery. Just honest, unfiltered observations that had cut through years of insulation. "Find out more," he said finally, discreetly. Later that evening, alone in his penthouse overlooking the San Francisco skyline, Adrian found himself rereading Olivia's article for the 4th time. His phone buzzed with a text from Tanner. "Basic info attached. She's won 3 journalism awards, specializes in tech ethics, previously worked for Washington Post, no social media presence except professional accounts. Graduated Columbia School of Journalism. Known for declining interviews with subjects of her investigations." Adrian set down his phone and walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows. The city lights glittered below, a constellation of human activity and ambition. He had built his empire on understanding patterns, in technology, in markets, in human behavior. But Olivia Winters defied his usual categories. Most people who criticized him wanted something: attention, money, revenge. What did she want? Simply the truth? That seemed naively idealistic in an industry built on carefully constructed narratives. His reflection stared back at him from the glass. The successful CEO, the tech visionary, the man who had everything. Yet Olivia's words echoed, "I can see the ego from orbit." Was his self-image as transparent to others as it had been to her? The thought was unsettling. Adrian's phone rang, his sister, Diana. "Hey, stranger," she said when he answered. "You missed family dinner on Sunday." Mom was disappointed. "I had the acquisition meeting to prep for," he replied automatically. "You always have meetings," Diana sighed. "What's going on?" "You sound off." Adrian hesitated. Diana was the only person who had known him before the success, before the carefully constructed image. "Have I changed that much?" he asked finally. "Since we were kids?" There was a pause on the line. "Where's this coming from? Just answer the question." "Well," Diana said carefully, "you've always been brilliant and driven. But yes, something has changed. You used to listen more. You used to doubt yourself sometimes in a healthy way." Adrian frowned. "And now?" Beyond the surface, the Children's Medical Research Foundation benefit was exactly the type of event where Olivia Winters felt out of place. Crystal stemware, black ties, and conversations punctuated with casual mentions of vacation homes and private jets. She tugged at the neckline of her borrowed gown, wishing she'd declined the assignment. But the Foundation's breakthrough gene therapy research was genuinely newsworthy, unlike most of the society events her editor pawned off on junior reporters. "Champagne, miss?" A server appeared with a tray. "No, thank you." "Sparkling water if you have it," Olivia replied, scanning the room for the Foundation's director. She needed one substantive interview before escaping to the comfort of her small apartment and worn pajamas. "Ms. Winters." "What a pleasant surprise." The voice was unmistakable. Olivia turned to find Adrian Mercer standing beside her, looking irritatingly perfect in a tailored tuxedo. His presence was no coincidence. The tech industry rarely overlapped with medical research galas. "Mr. Mercer," she said coolly. "Following me to critique my coverage of you in person?" Adrian's smile didn't falter. "Actually, Horizon is announcing a partnership with the Foundation tonight. Our neural interface technology has applications for neurological disorders." He raised an eyebrow. "Though I did find your article thought-provoking." Olivia studied him, looking for signs of the anger or defensiveness she usually encountered from subjects of her critical pieces. Instead, she found something unexpected: curiosity. "Most CEOs send angry emails or threaten to sue," she remarked. "You tracked me down to a charity event." "I prefer direct communication," Adrian replied. "And contrary to your assessment of my oversized ego, I can appreciate well-reasoned criticism. Your concerns about privacy aren't unfounded, though I think you underestimate our safeguards." A server passed with champagne, and this time Olivia accepted a glass, needing the fortification. "So you engineered this meeting to defend your company's honor?" "I engineered this meeting because you're interesting," Adrian said simply. "Few people speak to me with such unfiltered honesty anymore." The directness of his response caught her off guard. Before she could reply, they were interrupted by the Foundation's director announcing dinner. "It seems we're at the same table," Adrian observed, gesturing toward table 8. "Serendipitous, wouldn't you say?" "Suspiciously so," Olivia muttered, but followed him to their seats. Throughout dinner, Olivia found herself engaged in the most stimulating conversation she'd had in months. Adrian was undeniably brilliant, challenging her assumptions about neural technology, with insights that hadn't appeared in any press release. She countered with questions about data security that made him pause and consider before responding thoughtfully. "You actually care about the ethical implications," she said finally. Surprised, Adrian's expression turned serious. "Of course I do. Horizon's technology will eventually interface directly with human thought. The responsibility is enormous. Then why the dismissive attitude at the gala?" He considered this, swirling the water in his glass. "Defense mechanism, perhaps. When you've been scrutinized as long as I have, you develop a certain protective armor." "Most would call it arrogance," Olivia pointed out. "A fair assessment," Adrian conceded with unexpected humility, "though I prefer to think of it as efficient self-preservation." As dinner concluded and the auction began, Adrian leaned closer. "Would you like to see what we're actually doing with the Foundation? The real work, not the press release version." Curiosity won over caution. "Lead the way," Adrian guided her, through a side door and down a corridor to a small conference room where displays showed brain imaging sequences and neural pathway simulations. "This is Dr. Patel's research on rewiring neural pathways in children with traumatic brain injuries," he explained, his voice softening. "Horizon's interface technology could help rebuild connections, potentially restoring function that would otherwise be permanently lost." Olivia studied the displays, then looked at Adrian with new understanding. His passion wasn't performative, it was genuine. "This isn't about profit," she observed. "Not everything is," he replied quietly. "My nephew had a brain injury from a car accident when he was 7. Conventional treatments could only do so much." The revelation shifted something in Olivia's perception. This wasn't the calculated CEO from the gala. This was someone with personal stakes in the technology he developed. "Why didn't you mention this in your PR materials? It humanizes the whole enterprise." Adrian's expression clouded. "I don't use family tragedy for corporate gain. The technology should stand on its own merits," Olivia nodded, respecting the boundary but noting the contradiction. A man accused of endless self-promotion refusing to use a sympathetic personal story. "Besides," Adrian added with a hint of his usual confidence, "I thought journalists were supposed to dig beneath the surface. Find the story behind the story." "Touché," Olivia admitted, "though you don't make it easy." As they returned to the main ballroom, Adrian stopped in a quiet alcove. "I have a proposition. You clearly have concerns about our technology. Come tour our research facility, off the record. See what we're actually doing, ask any questions you want. If you still have concerns afterward, I won't try to stop you from publishing them." Olivia regarded him skeptically. "Why would you offer that?" "Because your critique matters," he said simply. "Because you're not looking for clickbait. You're genuinely concerned about the implications of our work. And because I think you're fair enough to revise your opinion if presented with new information." The sincerity in his voice was disarming. For a moment, Olivia glimpsed the man behind the carefully constructed public image, someone who cared deeply about his work's impact, who had built walls to protect not just his ego, but his vision. "Tuesday morning," she found herself saying, "but I make no promises about what I'll write afterward." Adrian's smile was different now, smaller, more genuine than his public version. "I wouldn't expect anything less, Ms. Winters." As they rejoined the gala, Olivia realized with some surprise that she was looking forward to Tuesday. Not just for the exclusive access to Horizon's facility, but for another glimpse of the Adrian Mercer who existed beyond the headlines, the one whose complexity she had only begun to uncover. Part 4. Walls Crumbling Tuesday. Morning arrived with uncharacteristic fog blanketing the Horizon Innovations campus. Olivia stood at the security checkpoint, journalist credentials in hand, wondering if she had made a mistake accepting Adrian's invitation. The glass and steel complex loomed before her like a fortress of technological ambition. "Ms. Winters." Adrian appeared at the entrance, dressed more casually than she had seen him before. Dark jeans and a simple navy sweater that somehow made him seem more approachable. "Thank you for coming. I'm here as a skeptic, not a convert," she reminded him, following him through the sleek lobby where employees glanced curiously at their passing. "I would expect nothing less," he replied. "That's precisely why I wanted you here." The tour began with standard demonstrations. Laboratories with researchers in white coats, testing facilities with volunteers wearing prototype interfaces. Olivia took mental notes but asked few questions, waiting for something beyond the corporate showcase. "Not impressed?" Adrian asked as they exited a particularly sterile research wing. "I've seen the promotional videos," Olivia replied. "I was hoping for something more substantial." Adrian studied her for a moment, then nodded. "Follow me." He led her to a private elevator that descended to a sub-level not indicated on the building directory. When the doors opened, Olivia found herself in a space that looked nothing like the polished upper floors. Here the walls displayed children's artwork, and the lighting was warm rather than clinical. "This is our pediatric rehabilitation center," Adrian explained quietly. "We partner with local hospitals to provide free therapy, sessions for children with neurological injuries or conditions. A physical therapist worked with a young girl, wearing what appeared to be a simplified version of Horizon's neural interface. As they watched, the girl, who had limited mobility in her right arm, gradually lifted a block using the interface to help strengthen the neural pathways. "Remarkable," Olivia murmured, genuinely moved. "This is what keeps me going," Adrian admitted, his voice softer than she had ever heard it. Not the stock price or the awards. As they continued through the facility, Olivia found herself revising her understanding of both Horizon and its enigmatic CEO. The research was impressive, but what struck her most was how the staff interacted with Adrian, with respect, but not fear, offering honest assessments rather than calculated responses. They're not afraid to tell you when something isn't working, she observed after a researcher had openly discussed a failed approach. That's the only way we improve, Adrian replied. I learned early on that surrounding yourself with yes people leads to stagnation. He paused. Though I'll admit, that philosophy hasn't always extended beyond these walls. The admission surprised her. Hence the carefully crafted public persona. Adrian led her to a small courtyard garden hidden within the complex. May I speak off the record for a moment? Olivia nodded, curious. Transformed perspectives. 3 months later, Olivia stood in her apartment, staring at the 2 columns on her computer screen. The left contained bullet points for her latest article on Horizon's expanded neural interface applications. The right held notes for a more personal piece she wasn't sure she would ever publish, reflections on how perceptions change when we truly see beyond surfaces. Her phone buzzed with a text from Adrian. Committee meeting finally over. Still on for dinner at Diana's? A smile tugged at her lips as she typed her reply. Yes, bringing the wine I promised. Should I prepare for more embarrassing childhood stories? The evolution of their relationship over these months had surprised them both. What began as professional skepticism had transformed into mutual respect, then friendship, and now something deeper that neither had anticipated, but both embraced with cautious optimism. Olivia's latest article on Horizon had been neither a hit piece nor a puff piece, but a nuanced examination that acknowledged both the promise and potential pitfalls of the technology. Adrian had called it frustratingly fair, the highest compliment he could offer. Her doorbell rang. Too early to be Adrian. Olivia opened the door to find Bethany, her editor at the Digital Chronicle. I was in the neighborhood, Bethany explained, waving an envelope. Thought you might want these in person. Inside were photos from the Journalism Awards dinner the previous week, where Olivia's investigative series on ethical frameworks for neural technology had won the industry's highest honor. There she was at the podium, and beside her, Adrian Mercer, applauding with genuine pride despite being one of her primary subjects. Still can't believe he showed up, Bethany remarked, helping herself to coffee. Most CEOs would rather gargle glass than support journalism that challenges them. Olivia smiled, remembering Adrian's words that night. You make me better by questioning me. You make Horizon better by holding us accountable. He's not most CEOs, she replied simply. Bethany studied her with knowing eyes. So I've gathered. The office gossip machine is working overtime about you two. Care to comment for the record? The record can mind its own business, Olivia said firmly but without heat. My personal life stays personal. After Bethany left, Olivia dressed for dinner at Adrian's sister's home, a casual family gathering that would have terrified her 3 months ago. Diana had welcomed her with immediate warmth, delighting in finally meeting the woman who punctured my brother's bubble. Her phone rang. Adrian again. Change of plans, he said without preamble. Diana's oldest has a fever. Rain check on dinner. Of course, Olivia replied. Tell her not to worry. Actually, Adrian continued, I was thinking we could use the evening differently. Remember that community tech center proposal you mentioned? The one for underserved neighborhoods? Olivia straightened. What about it? I've been speaking with the Horizon Foundation Board. We have the funding. What we need is someone who understands both the technology and the human impact to oversee implementation. Are you offering me a job, Mercer? Olivia asked, amused. I'm offering you a partnership, he clarified. The foundation operates independently. You'd maintain your journalistic integrity while helping shape technology access for communities that need it most. The proposal took her breath away, not just for its professional opportunity, but for what it represented. Adrian had listened to her concerns, not just defended against them. He had incorporated her perspective into concrete action. "I'd need to discuss terms," she said finally, trying to sound professional despite her excitement. "I expected nothing less," Adrian replied, and she could hear the smile in his voice. "Meet me at the pier in an hour? We can discuss it over that walk we've been postponing." Later, as they strolled along the waterfront, the setting sun painting the bay in gold and crimson, Olivia marveled at how drastically her perception had changed. The man beside her still possessed the confidence and ambition that had initially rankled her, but she now recognized these as facets of a more complex whole, a person capable of doubt, growth, and profound empathy when his defenses were lowered. "You're quiet," Adrian observed, his hand finding hers as they walked. "Just thinking about first impressions," Olivia replied. "And how wrong they can be," Adrian laughed. "You weren't wrong. I was arrogant, insulated by success and surrounded by people who reinforced rather than challenged me. And now?" He stopped, turning to face her as the wind ruffled his hair. "Now I have you to keep me honest, to remind me when I'm disappearing into my own mythology." "Someone has to," Olivia teased, but her eyes were soft. "Your ego is still visible from orbit on certain days." "Only certain days? I must be slipping." His smile faded into something more serious. "You know, when you mocked me at that gala, it was the first time in years I felt truly seen, not as the CEO or the visionary, but as a flawed human being trying to create something meaningful." Olivia reached up to touch his face, the gesture still new enough to feel like a small revelation. "And when you invited me to see beyond my first impression of you, it reminded me why I became a journalist in the first place. To find the truth beneath the surface." As Adrian leaned down to kiss her, Olivia reflected on how their story had unfolded, not through grand romantic gestures or dramatic declarations, but through the gradual, sometimes uncomfortable process of truly seeing and challenging each other. Their relationship wasn't built on blind adoration or perfect agreement. Instead, it was founded on something far more sustainable: mutual respect, intellectual challenge, and the willingness to grow beyond comfortable certainties. What had begun as mockery had evolved into a connection that transformed them both. Her, to recognize that ambition and integrity could coexist. Him, to embrace vulnerability as strength rather than weakness. Together they were learning that the most profound connections often begin not with instant harmony, but with the courage to challenge and the wisdom to listen. As they continued their walk, discussing plans for the community centers, Olivia realized that this, the easy exchange of ideas, the respectful disagreement, the shared vision for something larger than themselves, was perhaps the truest form of intimacy. Not the absence of conflict, but the presence of growth. Not identical perspectives, but transformed ones.